start my recording. There you go. And then let's see. Let's go Facebook Live. Yay. If I can find where
is the Facebook Live on your page, Rosalyn?
it's going to be, I'm going to post it. No, I'm going to post it to the churches. Well, I have more folks on my page. So yeah, let's go my page.
Just so I'll know where to go so I can share it to my page.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to. I think I'm gonna go to the church's page.
Okay.
Are you connected to the church's page?
I think so. Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. All right.
Yes.
Sacred.
And it's the Freedom's Chapel, right?
That's right. Freedom's Chapel,
Okay.
Christian Church,
Yeah.
DOC.
Yeah, I'm here.
Very good. All right. Yay.
Got it. Okay.
It's joining. Let's see if we get it. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Here we are live on Facebook for our Soulful Sacred Conversation. On this evening, we're going to talk about Queen Esther and the power of our no. And
we're not talking about Esther.
We're not talking about, no, I'm sorry. We're talking about Vashti. We're talking about Queen Vashti. And we're going to, I think this is a timely word and a timely conversation, particularly on this day. And I am more than pleased to stop and offer my dear friend, Dr. Sessions, for her to lead us in this conversation. She is the one of the co-pastors of The Gathering, the Womanist Church in Texas. And are you in Dallas? Are you actually in Dallas? In Dallas, Texas. And she can give you more. I'm horrible with introductions. So you say whatever you want to say about yourself, but take us, please, where we need to go.
Yes, ma'am.
It is in your, we are in your hands. Thank you.
Well, that's all I want to say. That's enough, that because I'm ready to get into this Bible study, into this soulful sacred conversation. I have been looking forward to this ever since the invite. And you are also correct in that this is a timely season, timely day, night for us to be having this conversation about this particular biblical woman. And so I'm real excited about that. Now, did you want to go ahead and read the text, or do you, because you have a, okay, we'll do that.
Yep, let me share it with you right now. Let's do that now. Mm-hmm. This is Esther, the first chapter, starting in the first verse. It'll give you the full picture. This happened in the days of Ahasuerus, the same Ahasuerus who ruled over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. And in those days, when King Ahasuerus, or Xerxes, sat on his royal throne in the citadel of Susa, in the third year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his officials and ministers. The army of Persia and Media and the nobles and governors of the provinces were present while he displayed the great wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and pomp of his majesty for many days, 180 days in all. When these days were completed, the king gave all the people present in the citadel of Susa, both great and small, a banquet lasting 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were white cotton curtains and blue hangings tied with cords of fine linen, and purple to silver rings and marble pillars. There were couches of gold and silver on the mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and colored stones. Drinks were served in golden goblets, goblets of different kinds, and the royal wine was lavished according to the bounty of the king. Drinking was by flagons without restraint, for the king had given orders to all the officials of his palace to do as each one desired. Furthermore, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women in the palace of King Xerxes, Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, and Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, the 7 eunuchs who attended him. to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing the royal crown, in order to show the peoples and the officials her beauty, for she was fair to behold. But Queen Vashti refused to come to the king's command conveyed by the eunuchs. At this, the king was enraged, and his anger burned within him. Then the king consulted the sages who knew the laws, for this was the king's procedure toward all who were versed in law and custom. And those next to him were Karshina, Sethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Mamukin, the 7 officials of Persia and Media, who had access to the king and sat first in the kingdom. According to the law, what is to be done to Queen Vashti because she has not performed the command of the king conveyed by the eunuchs? Then Mamukin said in the presence of the king and the officials, not only has Queen Vashti done wrong to the king, but also to all the officials and all the peoples who are in all the provinces of the King Xerxes. That's my translation. For this deed of the queen will be made known to all women, causing them to look with contempt on their husbands, since they will say, King Xerxes commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, and she did not come. This very day, the noble ladies of Persia and Media, who have heard of the queen's behavior, will rebel against the king's officials, and there will be no end of contempt and wrath. If it pleases the king, let a royal order go out from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it may not be altered, that Vashti is never again to come before King Xerxes, and let the king give her royal position to another who is better than she. As we say in church, the word of God for the people of God. We thank God for the word. Now, I was taught that my Hebrew is an ancient language. And so if I messed up some of these names for y'all, y'all extend grace. Here we go. It's in your hands, ma'am.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I want to begin. Let me just say how I want to move through this. I want to give just a few initial thoughts. I'm going to read from a sermon excerpt that I preach actually on this text. And that sermon is also in our book, The Gathering, A Womanish Church, origin stories, litanies, and something else. I can't think of what the, but anyway, it's in our book. And then Dr. Nichols gave me and posted on the flyer some questions that she wanted me to respond to. So I'll respond to those questions, and then let's have a conversation. As we are going through our talk, if you have any questions or comments that you want to make, go ahead and put them in the chat. Dr. Nichols, if you'll pay attention to the chat so that we can make sure that we engage any of those questions, that would be good. And listen, if I am completely fine if in the middle of me going on my little rant, if you have something pressing, just feel free, to just jump in. All right. I'm really cool with that, because I know if you're like me, if you don't say it when you're thinking it, it leaves. So I'm really good with that. I want us to have that kind of conversation. So let me just go ahead and start by saying there is a word in verse 12 of this text that stuck out to me initially. But then listening, it's something that when you are listening to someone else read the text, and read it out loud, how important that is, and how you may even pick up things or words or phrases that may stick out to you. And so when Dr. Nichols was reading the text, another word jumped out at me, and maybe it's because of the season that we're in right now. But the first word that stuck out to me was in verse 12, and it's the word refused. Mm. The Bible says that Vashti refused. you refuse is not just to say no. To refuse is to express a determination not to do something. To refuse, y'all, is to dig your feet in the sand and say, not this time, baby, I'm not the one, right? To refuse is to be unwilling. To refuse is to have really strong feelings of opposition. To refuse is resistance. To refuse is to stand against. And so the Bible says that Vashti refused to come at the king's command. So let me just, because we read a lot, and I just want to give I want to back up into that, right? And what she was refusing to do, right? So King Ahasuerus, and the only reason I know how to pronounce that is because I researched it, and you know how they have the Hebrew and they will say it so you'll know how to say it right. Okay, that's how I know, because that's what I did before this Bible study. So King Ahasuerus, in an effort to show off the splendor and majesty of his kingdom, of his empire, he threw a party. But now this was not just any party. The Bible says he held a banquet, one that lasted 180 days. Anybody ever been to a 180-day party? Like, not even in my wildest days had I been to a 180-day party, right? And his invited guests were the bigwigs, were nobles, officials, and the armies of Persia and Media, right? Now, if that 180-day banquet was not enough, after that one, he threw another banquet. This one lasted only 7 days. But this banquet, this 7-day banquet, was for all the people in the city of Susa. And when I say all, I mean all, like the rich folk and the poor folk came to this party and were invited to this party. Now, here's what's interesting. The thing about these parties was that they were characterized by drinking. In fact, the Hebrew word for banquet is a word called, I'm gonna put in the chat, mestah, M-E-S-T-A-H. I know we got at least one Hebrew Bible scholar on this call, Reverend soon-to-be Dr. Camila Hart-Sharp. And so that Hebrew word for banquet is mestah, and it means the place of drinking. Now, when I first heard this word or said this word out of my mouth, mestah, to me, you know what it sounds like? What does it sound like to y'all? Right in the chat, just mestah. What does that sound like to you? Just saying the word. Nobody want to write in the chat? Yes, Gail, that's my sister. That's exactly what it sounded like to me. Messed up, right? Because that's just what happened, Dr. Gail. They got messed up. And that's what happened. The king and the other party animals, everybody got messed up. Now, on the last day of the banquet, while everybody was messed up, the king sent 7 eunuchs to fetch Queen Vashti. In verse 11, the eunuchs were sent to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown to show the peoples and the officials her beauty, right? Now, scholars of the Old Testament agree unanimously, right? Many of them. I would say your more progressive biblical scholars, even Jewish rabbis who write Midrash, believe and agree that what the king had summoned her to do was not just to display her beauty, but to dance. And not just to dance, but to dance naked, wearing only her crown or her tiara before the king and hundreds of drunken men and other people, right? Maybe some women drunk there too, I don't know, these last 7 days. Now, so he wanted her to come naked, dancing, wearing her tiara. I learned something, that this word tiara originated from ancient Persia, where Vashti's story took place. The royal crown or the royal tiara represented power. It represented honor, glory, victory, and it legitimized her, Vashti, as queen. It was worn for the coronation of the queen and other prestigious and formal events. That's when the tiara was to be put on. She just didn't wear it to come wash the dishes or to, take the dog for a walk or to go vote or whatever. No. But it seems to me that Vashti didn't see this drunken revelry as some kind of prestigious event worthy of showing up with herself, and certainly not wearing her crown or her tiara, right? So to that request, Vashti said, hell no. Now that's the title of my sermon, and I know Reverend Dr. Melva Sampson also preached this sermon, and it's in a book somewhere, and she titled this sermon "Hell No" as well. So we have something in common there. But Vashti said, "Hell no, no, I will not come out and make a display for myself for your benefit. No, I will not defame my crown or myself in this gathering, right, of drunken people." She said, "Hell no." And so, what did she exhibit? What characteristics did she exhibit? What did this mean? What did it take for her to show up and say, hell no? Now, before I go further and respond to some of these questions, I know I've said a lot, so I want to give us some time to have some talk. I want to hear from you. Anybody got anything pressing you want to say, you want to shout out, you want to jump in? So let's talk. How are you feeling about where I've gone so far? Take yourself off mute. Is that Dolly?
That's okay. Dolly.
Hey.
So yeah. So I'm with you because I've learned to read and see all of that in there and understand that was part of the dynamic. And I'm thinking about the courage that it took for her to be able to say, hell no, I'm not doing that. Knowing what it could have cost her, and thinking about how long the cost plays out. And so I'm thinking about my own situation. Sometimes in the process of saying no, even if we don't say hell no out loud, but in our minds, we may be saying hell no, because that's really how we feel about some stuff. There is a cost, and the cost is not just in that moment, but the cost lasts for a long time, and it compounds in a lot of ways that we can't foresee. So it takes a lot of courage when you're put in that position to be able to find the strength and the power to say no.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Anybody else want to jump in and say anything? Yes, Lori.
It's interesting that they paint this picture, and if you read it, you could think this is something special, different. We're not in this world like that now, but we are. And so it takes me back, because I've always been in a what so-called male field. If you don't say no the first time, it's going to be harder to say no the second time. And then you may not be able to go back and regroup, So sometimes it's a matter of life and death, of how you're going to move forward in your life. And so you have to make those decisions, and we have to think for ourselves. And in those times, and the whole reason why they had to declare all this other stuff going on, so the other women wouldn't take from her lead, is because there was a very patriarchal setting, and women weren't supposed to say no to their husbands. They were like property. But it's a lesson to be learned, because even during the times when we were property, there were people who had the correct courage enough and for generations to come to say no and to stop and say, this is not going to go on any longer. So I think it's a lesson to learn all the way through life in history that there are times that you have to put your foot down.
Yeah. Yeah. Reverend Marissa says in the chat, she says, I am struck by how emphatic Queen Vashti is or was. She refused emphatically, which indicates to me that she probably has journeyed to this no. She seems fed up with the king at this point. Wow. And what Reverend Marissa said to me ties in with what I heard from Lori and Reverend Dolly Pankey, particularly about when you don't, when there is a situation that calls for us or calls for a woman to stand up, to resist something, whatever it is, or to say no to something that she feels violates her integrity or her sense of well-being. The longer it takes us to say no, the longer it takes us to say no, right? The more difficult it is. And it reminds me of what Maya Angelou would say, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time, right? And so it's hard, right? But she was in this situation, and the word that Dr. Nichols uses and put as the question, please put yourself on mute, is the word power, right? So Queen Vashti was up against power. And I can't help but think, again, this came to my mind just now, thinking about those Supreme Court justice hearings and the way the power, right? Those senators, those conservative senators were going all in on Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, right? I think they saw her perhaps like the other men in Vashti's story who had wives who were like, no, wait, if we let her get away with this, if we let her get in this position, this progressive thinking Black woman who has, who sees the criminal justice system differently than we do, right? If we let her in here, we're gonna lose some of our power, right? So they were treating her in this abusive, oppressive, disgusting way, right? That definitely, there's no way it couldn't have impacted her on an emotional level, right? That was traumatic. Wasn't it traumatic for us to even watch that? Those of you who watched that, right? And so I see that, as I think about this. We have Gail Davis says, and she may have had to perform this feat before. I agree, she was fed up. Gail Davis, that's the other word that stuck out for me, that word perform, that she performed, right? Who tired of performing? Anybody tired of performing? Like, she had to perform her femininity. She had to perform being a woman in a certain way, in a way that made the men feel comfortable, in a way that didn't appear that she was threatening to them, right? Anybody had to perform your womanhood in a certain way? Anybody had to perform your femininity in a certain way, perform your Blackness in a certain way, right? So that people can be comfortable. Those, I know we have some on here who are LGBTQ. You haven't had to perform, right? And pretend that you're something that you're not in order to make people feel comfortable around you. Who tired of performing?
So Dr. Ari, I was thinking about something else regarding cost, because I mentioned what it cost us to say no, but then I started thinking there's a cost if we don't say no. And so I think we have to consider, what will it cost me if I continue this performance, if I continue in this way, if I continue to have to pretend and lessen myself in order to be acceptable in this setting or this circle, what is that going to cost me? And I think what gets us to the point where we're fed up and we're through, and we just get to the point where, okay, we're gonna stop this right here.
I'm done. And Reverend Dolly, the cost is, I'm gonna get to that too. I have more to say about that. I want to get to some of these. Let me see who else. It was somebody else. Latoya said, whoa, they way up here. Okay, let me see. I want to make sure we get people. Latoya Thompson said, so sorry. I thought I was on. Oh no, okay. Who is that? Yeah. Can we identify with the ways that we perform? Yeah. I know I'm tired of performing. Okay. Rosalyn says, yes, I believe today's news reminds us of what happens when we do not say no, when we keep performing. Yeah. I remember growing up, Gail Davis says, my father would always have me perform dance when we visited family or family visited us. I wonder, how did that make you feel? Did you feel like you were being exploited? Of course, you didn't have that language when you were a little girl, right? But was it something you minded doing, or you didn't? I mean, how did it make you feel, right? I'm listening.
At that time, you're young, you don't think anything of it. I know sometimes it even led to one of my uncles always wanted me to sit on his lap, and my father would be sitting there, so when they would come over, like, we play green onions and, dance, Gail, show them, Gail, and so at that time I didn't, but as I got older and thought about how I interact and embrace my sexuality, I'm like, was I like a sex object? Was I an object of someone's desire? But I didn't think of it as a child. You don't think of it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's move on. Now I want to address some of the questions that are on this that Dr. Nichols has for us. And let me just read you what the questions are, and then I'll go back and just say a little something about each one. So the first question is, what happens when a woman says no to oppressive or abusive? I added oppressive or abusive power. What happens when a woman says no to oppressive or abusive power? Second question, how does a woman find the power of her own voice? Third question, how do powerful women use their powerful voices for the good of other women? Now, before I address those questions, because my co-pastor, Reverend Camila Hall Sharp, is on here, and it triggered my thinking, I'm going to ask us to unpack the word power or powerful. So when we say that a woman is powerful, right? I think we all are clear when we talk about oppressive powers. That's the descriptive. That's describing what kind of power we're talking about. But when we say, how does a woman find the power of her own voice, or use her power to help other women? When you hear that, what do you think the word power? How would you describe the word power? What does it mean to be a woman with power, right? So give me some other words besides power. Strength, okay. Autonomy, oh, see, here we go. And listen, I think we know that in this world that we live in, this patriarchal, misogynistic, white supremacist culture, the last thing folk want is women with some autonomy, right? Dynamic, agency, vulnerability, and authenticity. Someone who's an advocate, the ability to act and to be heard. All right, I got wonderful. Yes, self-actualized. Okay, this is freedom, resilience. Yes, excess. This is good. All right, so that woman right there that exhibits these characteristics, and let me just tell you something, because I know most of y'all on here, I would consider powerful women. The ones that I don't know, I'm sure you probably are too. I have no doubt, right? So what does it mean? First of all, what happens when a woman says no to oppressive, abusive power? The first thing that I had, Reverend Dolly, was that she pays a price. When a woman uses her power, and when a woman says no to power, to oppressive power, to abusive power, she pays a price. It cost her something, and something important. Some of the things that it can cost a woman who says no is security. You can go ahead and write in the chat what you think, what kinds of security it may cost a woman, right? Security, what kind of security? It could cost a woman, she may pay a price of position. She may pay a price of her reputation, right? What happens when a woman says no to oppressive or abusive power? Well, most of the time, people are liberated physically, spiritually, emotionally. Somebody benefits, somebody is helped, because when a woman risks herself, risks her security, risks her position, risks her place, risks her reputation, it's on behalf of creating something that is going to transform community, family, church, neighborhood, the world, right? So somebody is going to be blessed. Somebody's is going to experience some kind of liberation or transformation, whether physically, spiritually, emotionally. I mean, think about it. When a woman says no, when a woman who is in an abusive relationship, when she's in abusive marriage, and she says no, and she gets out, who's liberated? Well, she's liberated. Her children are liberated. They may also pay a price financially, right? So there's a price to be paid, but there's also some liberation, right? Somebody gets helped, all right? What happens when a woman says no to oppressive, abusive power? She gains respect and admiration from some people. She becomes a woman of influence to some people. She becomes a go-to woman, right? Someone that people seek out for her wisdom, for her guidance, right? She also becomes a pariah, an outcast in some communities, in some churches, in some denominations. She's viewed as dangerous to be associated with. She's misunderstood, she's misrepresented, and she's slandered. Those are my responses to the first question. All
Sarah
right.
has her hand up.
Sarah
has her hand up.
Oh, come on, Sarah. I'm sorry. I'm on the roll.
I'm thinking, and thank you for noticing. But what I'm thinking about is in the book, The Badass Women of the Bible, and I don't know the names and all, but the three sisters that went to claim their father's land.
The five sisters,
Was it
the
five?
daughters of Zelophehad, and y'all, she's citing my book. Let me just say, Badass Women of the Bible. Thank you for that plug, Sarah.
Actually, I'm preaching that Sunday, but yeah, that they use their power to say, we want our father's land because he's not here. There is no reason why. And then the law was changed because of their power that they put forth. The law was changed for other women after them to be able to get property as well. That's what I'm thinking about as I'm listening.
That's right. That's right. And then Dr. Rosalyn says women in abusive relationships are most likely to be killed when she walks away. And that research says that the most dangerous time for a woman in an abusive relationship is when she leaves.
That's right.
Is when she leaves. Absolutely. So how does a woman find the power of her own voice? Now, again, these are my thoughts. And I'm going to tell you, I centered myself. I centered myself in reading Vashti's story and in responding to these questions. So that means that I consider myself a woman of power, right? I consider myself a woman of influence, and I know how it has cost me in my life and in my ministry. So most of these responses are as I'm reflecting on my own life and or the lives of other women that I know who have been in these kinds of situations, which means you too have a response to these questions that may be different from mine, and that's okay. I want to hear those. We want to hear your responses to these questions as well, but these are just mine. So how does a woman find the power of her own voice? Well, work. She works at it. She interrogates her life to understand why she doesn't use her voice in ways that honors herself. She interrogates her life to find out why she doesn't speak up for herself. She asks the question, what happened to silence her? And that's part of that trauma-informed way of looking at things, right? Because a trauma-informed lens asks the question, what happened to the woman, not what did the woman do, right? So she asked the question, what happened to me? When was the first time I remember feeling silenced, right? And that takes work, and that may involve engaging the help of a spiritual community, a therapist, a pastoral counselor, right? Someone to help you figure that out. It may involve reading some books on, childhood trauma, or books that help women come into the fullness of who they are, right? But whatever it is, it's work. So a woman finds the power of her own voice through engaging in work on herself. She's introspective, not introspective to the point where she's like, we're beating ourselves up, because but to understand, right? How does a woman find the power of her own voice? She begins a process of identifying the lies she's believed about herself. And then she countered those lies with truth. And y'all, that's my testimony, because that's what I did when I was in my 20s. I remember spending months identifying, telling myself the truth about what I really believed about myself, and wrote them down, wrote every lie that I could think of that I believed about myself. But now when you identify the lies, you got to counter those lies with the truth, right? So then I had to spend some time for every lie. Okay, what was the truth? Okay, all right. So you believe that all you're good for is sex. Can I keep it a buck? Okay, that was a lie that I had believed, and there's reasons why I believed that lie, right? So what was the truth? And I had to discover what that truth was. I discovered that truth in different ways, right? From what does God say about me? Because I know that's the truth, right? What do people who care about me say about me? And wrote those down. And that was a whole process for me. And so those are the things that I had to meditate on. Those are the things that I had to continue to tell myself, right? Because when you spent 20, 30, 40, 50 years believing lies about yourself, it's just not going to turn around overnight just because you had this aha moment, right? And so you have to meditate on the truth. Tell yourself the truth. Right? How does a woman find the power of her own voice? She begins she does work to silence her internal terrorist. That's what I call that voice inside my head that's telling me I'm not good enough, that tells me everybody else is better, prettier, smarter, more intelligent, deserves love and companionship, and I don't. That voice, that internal terrorist, is trying to sabotage my life, that's trying to kill me, right? I have to practice silencing that voice, right? And she starts using her voice even when she's afraid. And that requires courage. Okay, the last piece I'm going to say, and then we'll get into some conversation. How do powerful women use their powerful voices for the good of other women? Whew. We commit to doing no intentional harm or violence to other women. We make a commitment to do no harm, no intentional harm. Things happen. We're human, we're flawed, we're going to make mistakes, but we help other women, we support other women, we use our power on behalf of other women. We have to make a commitment to ourselves that I want women to win. And I'm going to do whatever I can in my power, in my influence, to help other women win. And those of you who are on this call who know me, you know that's true. You know that's true, right? And so then what else do? We cultivate an Ubuntu ideology, right? The profound sense that we as women, we are human are only through the humanity of others. I am because we are, right? We don't see ourselves disconnected from one another. When KBJ wins and when she won, we all win. When the gathering wins, when two Black pastors, co-pastor, when we win, when we show the world that two Black women can work together and pastor a church and love each other and respect each other, women win. Right? And so that requires a certain level of maturity. So we commit to grow up. We make a commitment to ourselves to grow up and not be petty. All right, every now and then, you know, we're gonna be petty, right? But we can't intentionally hurt each other. We have to think things all the way through. And then, you know, figure out what is it that I have or that I can do that can help another woman. And then have your eyes open for the opportunities to do so. And so these are my answers to the questions. So let's talk, because I know we go to what, 8:15?
Yes, we go to 8:15, and I think you have a lot of worthy conversation topics. So Reverend Dolly says, seeing other women. When you ask the question like, how do we name our power? She says, seeing other women who have become fed up and found their voice can also be a factor to help you find your voice. That's profound. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And that's and that's sort of like modeling, right? And we don't even realize it.
No.
Right? So Dr. Nichols, when we saw you plant a church, and I remember having a conversation with you when I was at Freedom Chapel, like, how did you do this? And you shared with me your struggles. You know, you didn't just paint a pretty picture. And yet you did it. Well, okay, then it's possible. Then it can be done. Right? And of course, back then, planting a church was not even on my radar. Right? So you don't know how you as a woman, just you growing, you stepping out, you using your voice, you using your influence, you using your agency in unconventional ways, in ways that are shocking to the world, right? Other people are seeing that. Other women are seeing that. And it's giving us hope.
Can we also, thank you for that. Can we give also that the folks on the opposite side know that same power as well. The scripture says that Mamukin said, all the other women go see what Queen Vashti has done, and it's going to have a ripple effect. So what you're saying is that women, you all saw, and those of us who saw women planting churches, it gave you a vision of what's possible. But those who are working against us see that very thing as well. And to underestimate the people who will work against or who will stir up, use their power to work against you is something you can't be naive about. That's just my.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I think this story is so important, because it shows what Dolly was saying. It shows the cost, the consequences, right? Because that's why Vashti was banished from the
kingdom.
The kingdom, not the kingdom, but she could never come in before the king again. The palace. Yeah, she was banished from the palace, right? Her throne was taken from her, right? But it's because of what the homeboys, the fear that was in them, that they were intimidated by that. And often we as women, we don't think, I'll just say me, I underestimated the fear and the threat that people perceived, right? That people experience, whether it's men or other women or systems or whatever, right? When a woman stands up, when a woman speaks up, when a woman says things that need to be said, but people don't really want to hear, she's perceived as dangerous and a threat. And the other powers and principalities are at work and want to destroy.
Dr. Ari, so thinking along those lines, and also just thinking about how we help to change dynamics. Something that came to me while you're talking is that we give people, or we can give other women permission to say, we don't have to keep functioning in this toxic way that we've been trained to function, and that this system tells us we ought to function. We can do something differently. We don't have to be suspicious of each other. And I think if we can, and some of this is modeling, because it's about how I enter into a conversation with you, how I approach you, because I'm not trying to one up you. I'm not trying to compete with you. So that's not what this is about. If I want to be a supportive sister for you, then there's a certain way I try to approach you. And also sometimes I have to say to people, it's okay. And I have to give them, I kind of have to give them hey, I'm not here for such. So, but it is giving permission for us to do something differently, and to treat each other differently, and engage each other differently, and to come together or surround each other and support each other in different ways than this divisive, competitive type of stuff that's been put upon us as this is how you survive in this space.
Yeah. And don't you think, my sisters, that that's what Dolly described, this alternative consciousness, this other way, this countercultural way of being in the world, is what it means to be a follower of the life and teachings of Jesus Christ? Like we are to be different. Our communication, our relationships are to have a different kind of character. even though we're in this world that says, no, I get mine and I don't care how you get yours. Right?
And I really think, can I say this? I really think that we have internalized the pettiness of the men in this story. There is not one woman in this story who attacks another woman in this moment. So the notion that women can't get along with other women, that we undermine each other, while that's real, you know, there are people who can tell that story, but isn't it important to consider that we have internalized the mentality of the oppressor rather than, and so therefore that's what stands out also for me in this, in the beginning of this.
We have internalized the patriarchy, Rosalyn. We have internalized white supremacy culture also.
Let me ask the question. This is Sarah. As I'm listening and I'm thinking from a DEI perspective, you know, I'm hearing women, then I'm hearing sisters, and I'm hearing women, I'm hearing sisters. And, you know, when I see a woman, when I see a sister, a Black sister, let me be frank. When I see a Black sister step, you know, like the Supreme Court, you know, thing, I'm absolutely thrilled. I'm overjoyed. Hey, look at that sister. She just opened the door for another little girl, you know, and whatever. But when I see stuff like the Me Too movement, and I've worked in the domestic violence field for the last maybe 25 years or so. Those movements, the white women do what they do. They wear their little hats and they march, but they leave us out. Okay, so from a DEI perspective, I don't really know how to handle what is being said in this conversation. I understand and I know how to handle what's being said in this conversation when I look at Dr. Irie, my sister, okay? Reverend Dr. And I would pick a name I couldn't read, P-L-E-S, Pless, okay? My sister there, okay? Reverend Nichols, my sister there. But when I'm dealing with a Caucasian woman, I'm you know, I'm kind of like, you know, can I trust you when you speak up for women? Who are you speaking up for? Are you speaking up for me too? Or are you just speaking up, you know, for you and the women, the other Caucasian women?
Yeah. I understand exactly what you're saying, right? And I hear you and I understand it and I've lived it and I think we all have. And so even there are situations where we're not safe as Black women, that we're not safe in the company, in communities where the majority are white women, right? We are not safe in most of those situations, I would say. And so it becomes a matter of discernment, right? It becomes a matter of discernment. And there are, and so just like we have to discern who we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with, right? We have to do the same thing in our relationships with other women, whether they're Black women or white women or Latinx women, whoever. We have to be discerning of that.
Can I also add this, is that I have been wounded by women. I have been wounded by Black women. I have been wounded and betrayed by white women. But that's true about me with races of people too. So I get it. When I see the movie 12 Years a Slave, the woman who played equivalent of Dolly Parton. Daisy, what was that woman's name in Roots? I never watched her again. She spit in the cup. She never had a career to me ever again. And that's the same thing when I see that woman who played the wife in 12 Years a Slave. Bless her heart. I don't know. I hope I can't.
Yeah. Okay.
Recognize her, because if she plays anything else, I will never be able to process of that. Is not always what women do. If I use this particular story of Vashti and Queen Vashti's experience, at the root of it is a system that's greater than those women that are at odds with each other.
Okay.
Fighting each other and losing ultimately together, while the system just partners.
Okay, I missed a lot of that. But Sarah, I'm with you 100%. And Dolly just said, I do understand, Sarah, I am guarded in mixed spaces where I do some of my leadership. I feel I must do it for my safety. Absolutely. Because I mean, the truth is for us, as much as people, we hear all this, we don't see color, and why can't we just all just be, listen, racism is real. People believe these stereotypes. White women, for the most part, right, believe and live in these stereotypes. And what I look for in my relationships, I need to hear you talk. I need to hear your values and what you believe in, right? And I'm talking about my relationship with white women. I need to know what you believe in, right? Do we have the same ethics? Do we have the same concerns for social justice? And I don't mean just lip service. I mean, like, what are you willing to risk, right? What are you willing to risk for Black folk? What are you willing to risk? Have you risked anything?
Part of my test is, how do you listen when people like me share what our experiences are, even though they seem very foreign to you. This is our reality. So how do you listen, and do you get defensive when we share and say, hey, this is what we live every day? And I saw that play out in a very liberal space, an interfaith, mixed type group, but very liberal, progressive type people. But it was hard for them in that space. Black people in the room said, this is our experience. And so we see this different. And so I think that's what helped me in that space and going forward to be a lot more guarded, because even people who mean well and have progressive values and are doing the work in some way, a lot of times it's hard for them to hear that and to hear that it is a very different experience.
And I don't have an issue with it being hard for them to hear, right? Because we as Black women, we go through a lot of things that are hard for us to hear too, that are hard for us to experience, but we do. So it's okay that if it's hard, right? But do you do it? Or do you allow your fragility to give you the freedom to run away? I look at that. That's important to me. Do you have racial stamina? I'm talking about white folk, white women. Do you have racial stamina? Are you trying to grow, to develop racial stamina that allows you to experience me in all the shit that I've been through and have to deal with, right? Do you have the stamina to hang in there with me?
And the stamina to not put the weight on me to make you feel better. Because now
That's
you
right.
feel bad.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Because now your feelings are hurt, right? Because you personalized everything. Yeah.
Can I say
Montreal had
something?
her hand up. Yes, come on, your hand was up.
Yes. I'm a member of not a member. I've got to get over that. I'm a ministry partner with the gathering. My daughter and I for going on 3 years this October, and we came from a Baptist tradition, and I was there for about 40 years, and then an evangelical tradition for about 17 years. And I can truly say my experience with the gathering, and white men and white women, y'all, they have racial stamina. I like that, Dr. Session. If I were in a white church hearing some of our truth, unvarnished, not cleaned up, if you know what I mean, these people have to have racial stamina. And we have one of our white co-conspirators, allies on this line, Lisa. This woman has the stamina. She knows white fragility. She can spot it a mile away, and she had issues in her own church with her own white folk. And that's her story to tell. It's in the book. I'm plugging the book again. The Gathering, litanies, sermons, and yada, yada, yada. Check that book out. But she had left her own church because of some misgivings there, and not being diverse and what have you. But they walk the walk in the gathering. They are out there literally feeding the homeless right beside us. They're marching for reproductive justice. Everything that we're doing, they've got skin in the game. I just wanted to say that for our white allies at the gathering, they've got skin in the game. And Dr. Session, you mentioned several months ago that the white folk have to they have to be okay with you all leading. And our our allies and co-conspirators are okay, or at least they're putting on a good front.
They're not fronting. They're not fronting. But yeah, so I thank you, Vontrell. And Lisa said, I knew you were going to call me out. I was intentional about not calling you out, Lisa, or not identifying you, because I didn't want to pander to anything that felt like fragility, right? You can handle yourself, and you can handle this conversation. Otherwise, you wouldn't have showed up here, right? And so you didn't need me to do that. But Mama Vontrell is the mother of the church, so you know she gonna do that. So just I think one of the things that I remember when I was in seminary, my womanist ethicist professor, Dr. Stacy Floyd Thomas, we were having a conversation about women not being able to get along, and women, and primarily, I think we were talking about Black women probably, and with this competition that women have. And one of the things that she said, and I have never forgotten it, she said, the problem isn't the women. She said, the problem is patriarchy. We have to focus on the theme, right? We have to focus on what did patriarchy do in this text? What did patriarchy do in that text? What is patriarchy doing today, y'all? What did it do yesterday? It wants to inhibit the freedom, the power, the creativity, the brilliance, the agency of women, of all women. So when we fight each other, patriarchy wins. it wins. You think about the church, and right now I'm thinking particularly the Black church. The Black church is what, 80% women? How is all of the, how is there any denomination that does not ordain women? Because women have internalized the patriarchy. Because women have internalized white supremacy culture. And let me just say this about white supremacy and white supremacy culture. It is not for just white people. Many of these Black churches, these Black denominations have internalized white supremacy culture. They operate, they function, they have policies and procedures and ways of doing things that support, that benefit white supremacy. So what do we do? What do we do? One of the things I say we do, sisters, is we have to heal ourselves. We have to heal ourselves. We have to do our own work on our own selves, because it's our own insecurities, our own anxieties, our own fears that cause us to harm and do harm to other women, right? It's unresolved stuff often that we've got within, that we have not dealt with, that we just avoid. We just think if we just don't talk about it, you know, it'll just go away or improve. No. So that's the first thing I think we need to do a self-check. Check yourself. Have a group of women that you can be butt naked honest with, that can hold you accountable, that can pray for you, that you can tell the truth to, that can help you to see things differently. What are some suggestions that you have, right? What can we do? Because we don't need any more women to be Vashti and to lose everything. Because there's lots of Vashtis, but I'm tired of seeing Vashtis get kicked out of the kingdom. I'm tired of seeing Vashtis die without health insurance, broke, because they spoke up, because they stood up, because they showed up, because they risked it, because they had courage. I'm tired of seeing those women not have a place to preach, not be able to feed their families. I'm telling y'all, not be able to pay their bills because they believe God was calling them to a certain kind of thing, to justice. And they did it, and they spoke up, and they had courage, and it cost them. Now they can't get hired. They can't get it. You know what I'm saying? So we need to help them. Those are my thoughts. What can we do to help the Vashtis of the world? You can't get to Esther with it. That's it. If there were no, and see, I wish I had more time, because let me tell you who else changed in that text. King Ahasuerus changed. King Ahasuerus, and I'll end with this. King Ahasuerus changed. While he was drunk, the homeboys came to him and said, listen, if we don't do something, other women in the kingdom, they're going to see what Vashti did, and they're going to think they can do the same, and we're going to have hell on our hands. So Vashti was banished. But I believe King Ahasuerus loved himself some Vashti. Because by the time Esther came along, Esther did the exact same thing that Vashti did. She disobeyed. She came to him unannounced, uninvited. She disobeyed the status quo. But by the time Vashti came, by the time Esther came, the king said, let her come. He had softened. He had mellowed. I think he had experienced, he realized, oh, I done lost one good woman. I'd be damned if I'm going to lose another one. Something about King Ahasuerus changed and was transformed. And so I bet that if we were to have a conversation with Vashti, she would do the same thing the same way over again, even though it cost her. That's the lesson for me for tonight. That's this conversation.
Yay!
Thank y'all. Anybody else got anything to say? I know it's 8:18. Talk to me. That's it. Landy London, Ron, Gail, Latoya, Tracy. Are y'all there? Carolyn, Arlene, Ivana, Rivers, Diana, y'all there?
I've been needing
we're
to be on
here.
mute, honestly. I've been big upping you since you've been talking. I've been having my
I
own
saw you here.
moments. So yes, thank you.
Irene, I like what you said at the end. The king changed.
Yes.
The king changed. And even though Vashti lost something, she made an impact on the person that made the difference.
Yes.
So, and that was her achievement, because even though she lost something, we all gained something.
Yes.
So that's the whole, there's a price to be paid. You already know that. I mean, we all know that. But make sure that the impact is going to be large enough for you to be proud, or at least to feel like it was worth what you lost.
Yes.
Because the key is, you're right, is changing the people that are in charge of this patriarchal system. Changing them, letting them see us in a new light, letting them see the power that really we already have. And so it's a price to pay, but it's very much worth it if it can change the status of a sister coming behind you or somebody else, to where the whole visual changes. And now there's a woman of power that says, hell no.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do just believe, though, that we can do something to mitigate the cost. We can do something as women to mitigate the cost of other Vashtis. It doesn't have to cost as much as it does. And we can be a part of that. Rosalyn says, for me, Vashti taught me that my crown is not a position, but an identity. I believe she understood that she was a queen, regardless of where she was. Come on here. Ron says, I think Vashti's story is powerful, especially knowing that while her story gives women of today power, it just caused her suffering in the moment, though probably not more suffering that if she didn't stand up for herself. And I think somebody asked that initially, what happens when we don't do it? What happens when we do? What happens to us inside when we know that we have this voice and we know we need to speak up, but we don't? What happens to us?
You know, in my experience, sometimes you don't have the luxury of even thinking about how it might impact everybody else, because for your survival, you have to say something, and consequences be damned.
Yeah.
And you really don't have the time to stick around to see if it's going to impact anyone else. Only thing you can do is hope and pray that
Yeah.
it may be years from now. I've heard things as a result of something that I did many years ago. Now I'm hearing about it maybe 10 or 20 years later. But
Yeah.
you don't know at that
Don't
time. You
know.
just know you have to breathe, you have to survive, and you have to, make your way to something bigger and better,
Yeah.
and you might lose it all. I mean, you may, you may have a bad reputation or be considered unapproachable and untouchable and all of that. But it really doesn't matter, because once you have that taste of freedom, you just all of that just kind of rolls off. And you may be isolated and alone, but you don't feel lonely because you did the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you, Gail. Now I'm gonna say, now it does hurt. It does hurt. So let's not minimize the pain.
Yeah.
It still hurts me.
Yeah.
But I deal with it. I deal with my hurt. I have my sisters that I can talk to, that I can cry with, that support me. I have brothers that will pray for me and listen to me. It does hurt. We got to process the hurt though and keep it moving, like Dr. Gail said. Okay. All right, that's it. Rosalyn, do what you need to do.
Because my internet may be unstable, I'm going to just thank you, Dr. Iris Sesson, for leading us in this conversation on this evening, and all of you who hung in there and offered your input and gathering. You have made us, you are our Ubuntu. You have made us more of who God called and created us to be by sharing with us this evening. We continue to pray and bless the gathering and the work of your hand and your heart, and believe that where you are in Dallas, that you are doing your work, that we're here in Memphis and all around those Patty's in Chicago, that wherever we are sisters working together, even in partnership with our allies, our young brothers who are also walking with us. Thank you very much. May the Lord bless and keep you, and bless the work of your hands and your hearts. Y'all go in peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Take care. God bless you.
All. Thank you. God bless you all.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Our soulful sacred conversation.